The mountain lion's amber eyes gleamed in the fading twilight just 30 yards behind her, and Lily Barrett knew with chilling certainty that she was being hunted. She had been gathering wild herbs in the foothills outside Dodge City, Kansas, completely absorbed in identifying the medicinal plants her mother desperately needed. The fever had struck 3 days ago, and the town doctor had already given up hope, but Lily refused to surrender so easily. She had heard stories of yarrow and elderflower growing thick in these woods, and desperation had driven her farther from town than she had ever ventured alone. Now the September sun was sinking fast behind the mountains, painting the sky in violent shades of crimson and purple, and she was at least 2 miles from the safety of civilization. The first hint of danger had come as a prickling sensation along the back of her neck, that primal awareness that something was watching. She had stopped mid-reach for a cluster of white flowers and slowly turned her head. Nothing but dense pine trees and the gathering shadows between them. But when she continued walking, she heard it again, the soft pad of something heavy moving through the underbrush, matching her pace exactly. Lily was 19 years old, born and raised on the Kansas prairie, where her father had staked his claim in 1865, right after the war ended. She knew these lands, knew the dangers they held. Mountain lions rarely came down this far from the high country, but drought had been harsh this year, driving predators closer to settlements in search of prey. Her father had mentioned seeing tracks near their property line just last week. She quickened her pace, clutching the cloth bag of herbs tight against her chest. The sensible thing would be to drop it and run, but these plants were her mother's only chance. Sarah Barrett had already lost so much weight, her cheeks hollow and her eyes sunken with fever. Lily would not return empty-handed. The cougar followed. She could hear it now, no longer bothering with stealth. The crack of twigs beneath massive paws, the rustle of brush being pushed aside. Her heart hammered against her ribs so hard it hurt. The path ahead wound through increasingly dense forest, the trees pressing close on either side. Darkness was falling fast in that peculiar way it did in late September, the light bleeding from the sky as if someone had opened a vein. Lily began to run. Her worn leather boots pounded against the packed earth of the narrow trail. Branches whipped at her face and caught in her long brown hair, which had come loose from its pins hours ago. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her lungs burning with effort. Behind her, she heard a sound that turned her blood to ice, a low growl that resonated through the twilight like distant thunder. She risked a glance over her shoulder and immediately wished she had not. The cougar was visible now, a massive tawny shape flowing through the shadows with terrible grace. It was enormous, easily over 150 pounds of pure muscle and predatory intent. Its ears were flattened against its skull, its body low to the ground in the stalking posture that preceded an attack. The trail ahead split into 2 paths, one continuing straight toward town, the other veering left toward higher ground. Lily chose left without thinking, some instinct telling her that open ground might give her a better chance than being trapped in the dense woods. Her skirts tangled around her legs as she ran, and she grabbed handfuls of fabric to lift them higher, propriety be damned. Survival was all that mattered now. The cougar was gaining. She could hear its breathing, a rough panting that seemed impossibly close. Her legs burned with exhaustion, her vision blurring with tears of fear and frustration. She was not going to make it. After everything, after nursing her mother day and night, after finding the herbs, after coming so close to saving her, she was going to die in these woods and be nothing but scattered bones by morning. Then she saw the light. It was faint, just a flicker of orange through the trees ahead, but it meant fire, and fire meant people. Lily put on a burst of speed she did not know she possessed, her entire body screaming in protest. The cougar snarled behind her, so close now that she could almost feel its breath on her neck. She opened her mouth to scream for help, just as her foot caught on an exposed root. She went down hard, the impact driving the air from her lungs. The bag of herbs flew from her hands and scattered across the ground. Lily rolled onto her back, scrabbling backward on her hands and heels, and found herself staring directly into the cougar's face. It had stopped just 10 feet away, its body coiled like a spring, ready to pounce. In the dying light, its eyes were flat and golden, utterly without mercy. This was how she would die. The mountain lion gathered itself, haunches rising, and Lily threw up her hands in a futile gesture of protection. She thought of her mother, alone and feverish in their small cabin. She thought of her father, dead these past 2 years from consumption. She thought of all the things she would never do, never see, never experience. The cougar leaped. A massive shape exploded from the trees to Lily's left, moving with impossible speed. There was a tremendous impact, the sound of bodies colliding, and suddenly a man was between her and the mountain lion. He was enormous, easily 6 feet 4 inches of solid muscle, with hair the color of dark honey falling past his shoulders. He wore buckskin pants and a leather vest over a dark cotton shirt, and in his hands he gripped a long hunting knife that gleamed wickedly in the fading light. The cougar had been knocked sideways by his charge, but it recovered quickly, spinning to face this new threat. It screamed, a sound like a woman in mortal agony, and the man answered with a roar of his own that seemed to shake the very trees. "Get back," he commanded without taking his eyes off the cougar. His voice was deep and rough, carrying the absolute authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Lily scrambled backward, her hands scraping against rocks and roots. She could not seem to catch her breath, could not tear her gaze away from the tableau before her. The man and the mountain lion circled each other slowly, and she realized with shock that the cougar was genuinely wary of him. This was not normal prey, not something to be easily brought down. The man was built like nothing Lily had ever seen. His shoulders were impossibly broad, his arms thick with muscle that bunched and shifted beneath his sun-darkened skin. He moved with the same fluid grace as the predator he faced, perfectly balanced, every movement economical and purposeful. There was a scar running along his left forearm, pale against his tanned flesh, and several more visible at the open collar of his shirt. The cougar feinted left, testing him. The man did not flinch. He adjusted his grip on the knife and lowered his center of gravity, ready for the attack. "Go on," he said to the animal, his voice steady and calm. "This is not your fight. There is easier prey in these hills." For a long moment, nothing happened. The forest around them had gone utterly silent, even the insects seeming to hold their breath. Then, with a final hiss of frustration, the mountain lion backed away. It retreated slowly, never turning its back, its tail lashing. When it reached the edge of the clearing, it paused and looked directly at Lily one last time. Then it melted into the shadows and was gone. The man held his position for several long seconds, listening. Finally, he straightened and turned to face her. In the near darkness, Lily could just make out his features, a strong jaw covered in several days' worth of dark blonde stubble, a straight nose that looked like it had been broken at least once, and eyes that were an unusual shade somewhere between gray and blue. He was perhaps 25 or 26, young but with the weathered look of someone who spent his life outdoors. "Are you hurt?" he asked, sliding the knife into a sheath at his belt and moving toward her. Lily tried to answer but found her voice had abandoned her. She shook her head mutely, still sitting on the ground where she had fallen. Now that the immediate danger had passed, she began to shake uncontrollably, her entire body trembling with reaction. The man knelt beside her, his expression softening. "It is all right," he said gently. "You are safe now. Can you stand?" He offered his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Lily took it. His palm was warm and calloused, his grip firm but careful as he helped her to her feet. Her legs nearly gave out immediately, and he caught her around the waist with his other arm, steadying her against his chest. "Easy," he murmured. "Take your time, the shock will pass." Lily found herself pressed against the solid wall of his torso, and even through her fear and disorientation, she was acutely aware of the heat radiating from him, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against her ear, the faint scent of pine smoke and leather that clung to his clothes. She pulled back slightly, embarrassed, and he released her immediately, though he kept one hand hovering near her elbow in case she stumbled again. "Thank you," she managed to whisper. "You saved my life." "Xavier Quinn," he said with a slight nod. "I have a camp nearby. Saw you running and heard the Cougar. Figured you could use some help." "Lily Barrett," she replied automatically. "I was gathering herbs for my mother. She is sick, and I need to get these back to town." She looked around frantically and spotted the scattered plants lying in the dirt. With a small cry of dismay, she dropped to her knees and began gathering them up, checking each one for damage. Many were crushed or dirty, but some had survived the fall intact. Xavier crouched beside her and began helping, his large hands surprisingly gentle as he collected the delicate leaves and flowers. "Your mother must be very ill for you to risk coming out here alone," he observed. "Fever," Lily said, her throat tight. "The doctor said there was nothing he could do, but I had heard about these plants. I thought if I could just find them, make a tea like my grandmother used to. I did not mean to stay so late. I lost track of time." "Dodge City is a good 2 miles from here, and full dark is maybe 15 minutes away," Xavier said, standing and offering her the herbs he had collected. "That cougar might have given up on you, but there could be others. Or wolves. These mountains are not kind after sunset." Lily took the plants and carefully wrapped them back in the cloth, tying it securely. "I know the way back," she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "I will be fine." Xavier studied her for a long moment, his gray-blue eyes unreadable in the gathering darkness. "No," he said finally, "you will not. I will walk you home." "That is not necessary," Lily protested, though the thought of facing those dark woods alone again made her stomach clench with fear. "I have already imposed on you enough." "It was not a question," Xavier said, but his tone was not unkind. "I am not in the habit of saving women from mountain lions only to let them get eaten by something else on the way home. Besides, my camp will still be there when I get back." Before Lily could argue further, he turned and began walking down the trail toward town, clearly expecting her to follow. After a moment of indecision, she hurried to catch up. Her pride bristled at being ordered around, but her common sense recognized the wisdom of his offer. Alone, she would be terrified of every shadow and sound. With him beside her, she felt remarkably safe despite having just met him. They walked in silence for several minutes, Xavier setting a steady but manageable pace. He moved through the darkening forest with the ease of long familiarity, never stumbling, never hesitating. He seemed to know exactly where to step to avoid roots and rocks, navigating by some sixth sense that Lily did not possess. She found herself watching him more than the path, fascinated by the controlled power in every movement. "You live in these mountains?" she asked, needing to break the silence. "For now," Xavier replied. "I trap during the winter, hunt and trade the rest of the year. Been up in these hills since spring." Alone. The question slipped out before Lily could stop it, and she immediately felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment at how it sounded. Xavier glanced at her, and she thought she saw the corner of his mouth twitch in what might have been amusement. Alone, he confirmed. I prefer it that way. People tend to complicate things. That seems like a lonely life. Lonely and peaceful are not so different, he said. Out here, I do not have to worry about what anyone thinks or expects. I live by my own rules, answer to no one but myself. There was something in his voice, a hint of old pain or perhaps bitterness, that made Lily wonder what had driven him to such isolation. But she did not know him well enough to pry, so she let the subject drop. The forest grew darker still, the last traces of twilight fading from the sky. Above them, stars were beginning to appear through gaps in the tree canopy, hard, bright points of light in the vast blackness. Lily was grateful for Xavier's presence, for the quiet confidence he radiated. Every rustling in the underbrush made her jump, but he seemed completely unconcerned, occasionally glancing toward a sound but never breaking stride. "How long have you lived in Dodge City?" Xavier asked after a while, apparently deciding that conversation was acceptable after all. "All my life," Lily said. "My father brought us here in 1865, right after the war ended. He wanted to start fresh, away from all the death and destruction back east. We had a good life here until he passed 2 years ago." "I am sorry," Xavier said simply. "That must have been hard." "It was," Lily admitted. "He had consumption. We knew it was coming, but that did not make it any easier. My mother has never been the same since, and now this fever." Her voice cracked slightly and she swallowed hard. "I cannot lose her too, I cannot." Xavier was quiet for a moment, then said, "What you did today, coming out here alone to find medicine for her, that took courage. Foolish courage maybe, but courage nonetheless." "I had to try," Lily whispered. "What kind of daughter would I be if I just sat there and watched her die without doing everything I could?" "A sensible one, maybe," Xavier said, but there was no censure in his tone. "But I understand. We do not always make the smartest choices when it comes to people we love." They emerged from the dense forest onto a more open hillside, and in the distance, Lily could see the warm glow of lights from Dodge City. Relief washed through her so powerfully that her knees went weak. They were almost there. She was going to make it home. Xavier noticed her reaction and said, "See, not so far after all. Another 20 minutes and you will be safe in your own bed." "Thanks to you," Lily said. "If you had not come when you did, I would be dead right now. That cougar was going to kill me." "Maybe," Xavier said. "Or maybe you would have found a way to survive. You seem like the type who does not give up easily." They continued down the hillside, the terrain becoming more familiar with each step. Lily had walked this area many times during daylight hours, gathering firewood and hunting for wild onions and other edibles to supplement their meager supplies. Everything looked different at night, transformed into something strange and vaguely threatening, but Xavier seemed to have no trouble finding the path. "You come into town often?" Lily asked, surprising herself with the question. She told herself it was just polite conversation, nothing more. "Not if I can help it," Xavier said. "Once or twice a year to trade furs and buy supplies. Towns make me uncomfortable. Too many people, too much noise." "I cannot imagine living any other way," Lily said. "I like having neighbors, people to talk to and rely on. Being alone all the time would drive me mad." "We are different people," Xavier said with a shrug. "Nothing wrong with that." They walked on, the lights of Dodge City growing closer and brighter. Lily could make out individual buildings now, the squat shapes of homes and businesses that made up the frontier town. It was not much, barely 1,000 people on a good day, but it was home and safety and everything familiar. As they drew nearer to the outskirts of town, Lily felt an unexpected reluctance settle over her. Soon they would reach her cabin, and Xavier would leave, disappearing back into the mountains like something out of a dream. The thought bothered her more than it should have. He was a stranger, someone she had just met under terrifying circumstances. She should be eager to get home and away from him. Instead, she found herself walking a little slower, drawing out the journey. "Which way?" Xavier asked as they reached the edge of town where several paths diverged. "Left," Lily said. "We live about a quarter-mile down on the south side." They turned onto the narrow road that ran between scattered homesteads. A few windows glowed with lamplight, but most families had already settled in for the night. A dog barked somewhere in the distance, and Lily heard the faint sound of someone playing a fiddle, the melody carrying on the cool night air. "It is quiet," Xavier observed. "I expected more activity." "People rise early here," Lily explained. "Farmers and ranchers mostly, a few shopkeepers. By 9 o'clock, the whole town is usually asleep except for the saloons on Front Street." "Do you work?" Xavier asked. "I help at the general store sometimes," Lily said. "Mrs. Patterson, who runs it, is getting on in years, and she appreciates having someone to lift the heavy boxes and deal with inventory. It does not pay much, but it helps keep food on the table. Since my father died, money has been tight." They passed several more houses, and then Lily saw her own small cabin ahead, a dark shape against the starlit sky. No light showed in the windows, which likely meant her mother was sleeping, or worse, had taken a turn for the worse. Lily quickened her pace, suddenly anxious. Xavier followed her to the front door, waiting while she fumbled with the latch. The door swung open on hinges that needed oiling, and Lily stepped inside, pausing to light the oil lamp that sat on a small table just inside the entrance. Warm, golden light bloomed, pushing back the shadows and revealing the modest interior of their home. It was a single room with a sleeping area curtained off in one corner, a cooking area with a small iron stove, and a rough-hewn table with 2 chairs. Everything was clean but shabby, worn by years of use and insufficient funds for repairs or replacement. Lily's mother lay on a narrow bed behind the curtain, her slight form barely visible beneath a patchwork quilt. Lily set the lamp down and moved quickly to her mother's side, pressing a hand to her forehead. Still burning with fever, but no worse than when Lily had left that morning. She breathed a quiet sigh of relief. When she turned back, she found Xavier still standing in the doorway, clearly uncertain whether he should enter or leave. In the lamplight, she got her first clear look at him, and her breath caught slightly. He was even more striking than she had realized, all hard muscle and angular features that somehow combined into something compelling rather than harsh. His eyes, which she had thought gray, were actually a complex mixture of blue and silver, like storm clouds over water. "Thank you," she said again, moving back toward him. "I do not know how to repay you for what you did tonight." Xavier shook his head. "No payment needed. I did what anyone would do." "That is not true, and you know it," Lily said. "Not many men would charge a mountain lion with just a knife to save a stranger." "Maybe I am not most men," Xavier said, and this time there was definitely amusement in his voice. They stood looking at each other for a long moment, and Lily felt something shift in the air between them, some subtle change she could not quite name. She was suddenly very aware of how close he was, of the way the lamplight caught the gold highlights in his hair and cast his features into dramatic relief. "Will you be all right here alone?" Xavier asked, breaking the spell. "With your mother so ill?" "I have managed this long," Lily said, though the truth was she had been terrified every night, afraid she would wake to find her mother had slipped away while she slept. "We will be fine." Xavier nodded slowly, but he did not look entirely convinced. "I should go." My camp is a good hour from here, and I would like to get back before it gets much later. Of course, Lily said, stepping back to give him room to leave. Thank you again, for everything. Xavier hesitated, then reached into a leather pouch at his belt and pulled out something small and white. Here, he said, holding it out to her. Willow bark. Steep it in hot water and have your mother drink it. It will help with the fever. Lily took the bark, her fingers brushing against his palm. You carry medicine with you. I live in the wilderness, Xavier said with a slight smile. Knowing what plants can help or hurt is the difference between life and death out there. The willow bark will not cure her, but it should make her more comfortable. I do not know what to say, Lily said, touched by his thoughtfulness. You have already said thank you about 6 times, Xavier pointed out. That seems like plenty. He turned to go, and Lily felt a sudden panic at the thought of him leaving and never seeing him again. Will you come back? She blurted out, then immediately felt her face flush hot with embarrassment. I mean to check that we are all right. Since you gave us the medicine, you might want to know if it worked. Xavier paused in the doorway and looked back at her, his expression unreadable. If you want me to, he said carefully. I do, Lily said, meeting his eyes. I would like that very much. Something flickered across Xavier's face, gone too quickly for her to identify. Then I will come back, he said. Give me 2 days to see to some things at my camp, and I will return to check on you and your mother. 2 days, Lily repeated, committing it to memory like a promise. Xavier nodded once, then stepped out into the night. Lily stood in the doorway watching as he walked away, his tall figure quickly swallowed by the darkness. She stayed there long after he had disappeared, staring at the empty road and trying to understand the strange mix of emotions churning in her chest. Finally, when the night air grew too cold to ignore, she closed the door and turned her attention to caring for her mother. She stoked the fire in the stove and set water to boil, then carefully sorted through the herbs she had gathered, selecting the ones that looked most intact and potent. While the water heated, she added some of Xavier's willow bark, watching as it slowly steeped and turned the liquid a pale yellow color. Barrett stirred as Lily lifted her head and brought the cup to her lips. Lily, she murmured, her voice weak and confused. I am here, Mama, Lily said gently. I need you to drink this. It will help with the fever. Her mother drank obediently, making a face at the bitter taste but managing to finish most of the tea. Lily settled her back against the pillows and smoothed the damp hair from her forehead, murmuring reassurances, until Sarah's breathing evened out into sleep once more. Lily sat beside the bed for a long time afterward, holding her mother's hand and thinking about everything that had happened. The terror of being stalked by the Cougar, the moment she thought she would die, and then Xavier appearing like some avenging angel out of the darkness. She thought about the way he had moved, the absolute confidence and competence he radiated. She thought about his eyes and his hands and the deep rumble of his voice. 2 days felt like an eternity. The following morning, Lily woke to find her mother's fever had broken during the night. Sarah was still weak and pale, but her eyes were clearer than they had been in days, and she managed to eat a few spoonfuls of broth without immediately feeling sick. It was not a cure, not by any means, but it was progress, and Lily clung to that hope with everything she had. She spent the day tending to her mother and catching up on the household chores she had neglected during the worst of the illness. She washed clothes in the stream behind the cabin, scrubbing determinedly at stubborn stains until her hands were raw and red. She aired out the bedding and swept the floors and made a pot of vegetable stew that would feed them for several days. All the while, her mind kept drifting back to Xavier, wondering what he was doing, whether he was thinking about her. The thought was presumptuous and foolish, she knew. He was a mountain man who preferred solitude, someone who came to town only out of necessity. Their encounter had been a matter of chance and circumstance, nothing more. He had agreed to check on them out of basic human decency, not because he was interested in her personally. She needed to stop building fantasies in her head and focus on reality. But reality seemed suddenly pale and colorless compared to those few hours in the forest. For the first time in 2 years, Lily found herself thinking about something other than survival and grief. She found herself wondering what it would be like to know Xavier better, to hear the stories behind his scars, to understand what had driven him into isolation. The second day passed with agonizing slowness. Lily was jumpy and distracted, starting at every sound outside and finding excuses to look out the window toward the road. Sarah noticed her daughter's unusual behavior and commented on it weakly from her bed. "You seem restless today," she observed as Lily checked the window for perhaps the 20th time. "Is something wrong?" "No, Mama," Lily said quickly. "I am just watching the weather. It looks like it might rain later." Sarah looked at the cloudless sky visible through the window and raised an eyebrow, but said nothing more. She was too tired to press the issue, and Lily felt guilty for lying but could not bring herself to explain the truth. How could she tell her mother that she was waiting for a stranger, a man she had met under terrifying circumstances just 2 nights ago? Evening came, and with it, Lily's certainty that Xavier would not return after all. Why would he? He had done his good deed, ensured she arrived home safely, even given them medicine for her mother. He owed them nothing more, and expecting anything else was foolish. She was preparing their simple dinner when a knock sounded at the door. Lily nearly dropped the pot she was holding, her heart suddenly racing. She set it down carefully, smoothed her hair with trembling hands, and crossed to the door. When she opened it, Xavier stood on the other side, looking exactly as she remembered except that he had clearly bathed and changed clothes. His hair was still damp and pulled back from his face, and he wore clean buckskin pants and a dark blue cotton shirt that matched his eyes. "Hello," he said, and Lily was absurdly pleased to note that he seemed slightly uncertain, less confident than he had been in the woods. "You came back," Lily said, unable to keep the relief and happiness out of her voice. "I said I would," Xavier replied. "How is your mother?" "Better," Lily said, stepping back to let him enter. "The fever broke yesterday morning, and she has been improving since then. The willow bark you gave us helped tremendously." "Good," Xavier said, moving into the cabin with the same careful grace he showed in everything. He seemed too large for the small space, his presence filling the room in a way that had nothing to do with physical size. Sarah was awake, propped up against pillows, and her eyes widened slightly when she saw Xavier. "Mama, this is Xavier Quinn," Lily said quickly. "He is the one who helped me get home safely 2 nights ago. Xavier, this is my mother, Sarah Barrett." "Madam," Xavier said with a respectful nod, "it is good to see you looking better." "You are the mountain man my daughter has been anxiously waiting for," Sarah said, and Lily wanted to sink through the floor with embarrassment. "Mama," she hissed, but Xavier just smiled. "I hope I have not disappointed," he said easily. "Not at all," Sarah said, studying him with open curiosity. "Please sit down. Lily was just preparing dinner. You must join us." "I do not want to impose," Xavier said, but he was already moving toward one of the chairs at the small table. "It is no imposition," Lily said firmly, grateful for something to do with her hands. "We have plenty." The stew was simple but filling, made with vegetables and a little bit of salted pork, and Lily was pleased to see Xavier eat with evident appreciation. They talked while they ate, Xavier answering Sarah's gentle questions about his life in the mountains with more openness than Lily had expected. He spoke of long winters spent checking trap lines, of summers hunting deer and elk, of the profound silence that settled over the high country when snow fell. "It sounds lonely," Sarah said, echoing Lily's earlier comment. "Sometimes," Xavier admitted, "but there is peace in that loneliness. No one telling you what to do or who to be, just you and the land and the work of staying alive." "What brought you to that life?" Sarah asked, "if you do not mind my asking." Xavier was quiet for a moment, and Lily thought he might refuse to answer. Then he said, "I came west after the war. Fought for the Union, saw things no man should see. When it ended, I could not go back to my old life, pretending everything was normal, so I kept moving until I found a place that felt right." "The war took much from many people," Sarah said softly. "My husband fought as well. I think it changed him, though he never spoke much about what he experienced." "Most men do not," Xavier said. "Some things are too heavy to share." Lily listened to this exchange with fascination, learning more about Xavier in these few minutes than she had in their entire journey through the forest. She could see the weight of old pain in his eyes, the shadows that lingered despite his apparent peace with his current life. He was a man running from something, even if he had convinced himself otherwise. After dinner, Xavier helped Lily clean up despite her protests, his large hands surprisingly deft with the dishes. Sarah had drifted back to sleep, exhausted by the small amount of activity, and Lily and Xavier worked together in comfortable silence. "She seems much improved," Xavier said quietly, glancing toward the sleeping woman. "Yes," Lily agreed. "I think she is going to recover, thanks to you." "The herbs you gathered helped too," Xavier pointed out. "I just added a little extra." "You are too modest," Lily said, drying the last dish and setting it aside. "You saved both of us in different ways." They stood facing each other in the small space between the table and the stove, close enough that Lily could see the faint pattern of scars on his hands, the way his pulse beat in the hollow of his throat. The air seemed charged with something electric, a tension that was not quite uncomfortable but was definitely present. "I should go," Xavier said, but he did not move. "Yes," Lily agreed, but she did not step back. "I was thinking," Xavier continued, his voice low. "If you need more herbs or medicine, you should not go into the forest alone again. It is too dangerous." "Are you offering to accompany me?" Lily asked, trying to keep her tone light despite the way her heart was racing. "If you would like," Xavier said. "I know these mountains better than anyone. I can show you where the best plants grow, which ones are safe and which are not." "I would like that very much," Lily said honestly. Xavier smiled then, a real smile that transformed his entire face and made him look younger and less burdened. "Tomorrow, then. I will come by in the morning and we can gather what you need." "Tomorrow," Lily echoed, and this time it did not feel like an eternity away. Xavier left a few minutes later, and Lily watched from the window as he disappeared into the night. She felt lighter than she had in weeks, as if some terrible weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Her mother was recovering, and tomorrow she would see Xavier again. For the first time since her father's death, the future seemed to hold something other than endless worry and struggle. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the September sun warm but not oppressive. Lily rose early and tended to her mother, who was well enough to sit up and eat a proper breakfast of eggs and bread. Sarah watched with knowing amusement as Lily changed her dress 3 times before settling on a simple blue calico that brought out the green in her hazel eyes. "He is just helping me gather herbs," Lily said defensively when she caught her mother's expression. "Of course," Sarah said, but her smile suggested she was not fooled. Xavier arrived just after 8, carrying a large woven basket and wearing his usual buckskin and leather. He greeted Sarah politely, accepted Lily's offer of coffee, and then they set out into the morning. The forest looked completely different in daylight, beautiful rather than threatening. Sunlight streamed through the canopy in golden shafts, illuminating patches of wildflowers and making the dew on the grass sparkle like diamonds. Birds sang from every direction, and the air smelled of pine and earth and the last lingering warmth of summer. Xavier led Lily to places she had never known existed, hidden clearings where rare plants grew in abundance, rocky outcroppings where medicinal lichens clung to the stone. He taught her how to identify plants by their leaves and stems, which parts were useful and which were poison, how to harvest them properly to ensure they would grow back. Lily was a quick study, absorbing information eagerly and asking intelligent questions. Xavier seemed pleased by her genuine interest, answering patiently and occasionally praising her when she correctly identified something on her own. They worked together naturally, falling into an easy rhythm that felt like they had been doing this for years rather than hours. As the morning progressed, they talked about everything and nothing. Xavier told her stories of his time in the mountains, close calls with bears and wolves, harsh winters when he nearly ran out of supplies, the simple satisfaction of living off the land. Lily spoke of her childhood, memories of her father before illness took him, her dreams of someday having a garden full of healing plants that she could use to help people. "You would make a good healer," Xavier observed as they rested in the shade of a massive oak tree, eating the lunch Lily had packed. "I do not know enough," Lily said. "Everything I know I learned from my grandmother before she passed, and that was not very much." "Knowledge comes with time and practice," Xavier said. "You have the instinct for it, the desire to help. That is harder to learn than facts." "Do you think I could really do it?" Lily asked, surprised by how much his opinion mattered to her. "I think you can do anything you set your mind to," Xavier said simply, and the sincerity in his voice made her chest feel tight. They spent the entire day in the forest, only heading back when the sun began its descent toward the horizon. The basket was full of herbs and roots and bark, enough to treat her mother and have plenty left over to help others if needed. Lily felt accomplished and happy in a way she had not experienced in far too long. As they approached her cabin, Lily found herself reluctant for the day to end. "Will you come again?" she asked, trying not to sound too eager. "If you want me to," Xavier said, the same careful response he had given before. "I do," Lily said firmly. "I would like to learn more, about the plants I mean, and the forest." Xavier looked at her for a long moment, and Lily had the distinct impression he could see right through her transparent excuse. But all he said was, "Then I will come back. Day after tomorrow." "Perfect," Lily said, smiling up at him. She watched him walk away, already counting the hours until she would see him again. Over the following weeks, a pattern developed. Xavier would appear every few days, always with some excuse, a new plant he wanted to show her, a particularly good hunting area, a beautiful view from a high ridge. They would spend hours together, walking and talking and simply being in each other's company. Sarah continued to improve, growing stronger each day until she was able to resume light household duties, and she watched the developing relationship between her daughter and the mountain man with cautious approval. Lily found herself thinking about Xavier constantly when he was not there, replaying their conversations, remembering the way he moved and spoke, the rare smiles that made her heart skip. She knew she was falling for him, could feel it happening like a slow, inevitable slide, but she could not seem to stop herself even if she wanted to. Xavier was more difficult to read. He was always kind and attentive, clearly enjoyed their time together, but he maintained a certain distance, a wall that Lily could sense but not breach. She wondered if he felt the same pull she did, or if she was simply a pleasant distraction from his solitary life. One afternoon in early October, they were sitting beside a small stream, watching the water flow over smooth stones. The aspens had turned gold, painting the mountainside in brilliant yellow, and the air had taken on the crisp edge that meant winter was not far off. "What will you do when the snow comes?" Lily asked, trailing her fingers in the cold water. "The same thing I always do," Xavier said. "Trap, hunt, wait for spring." "That sounds incredibly lonely," Lily said quietly. "I am used to it," Xavier replied, but there was something in his voice, a hesitation that had not been there before. Lily gathered her courage and turned to face him directly. "What if you did not have to be alone this winter? What if you had someone to share it with?" Xavier went very still, his eyes searching her face. "Lily, what are you saying?" "I am saying that I care about you," Lily said, her heart pounding so hard she felt dizzy. "I think about you all the time. I count the hours until I will see you again. I know it is forward of me, improper even, but I cannot pretend anymore. I have feelings for you, Xavier." For a long moment, Xavier said nothing, and Lily felt her stomach drop with dread. She had miscalculated, read too much into their friendship, made a terrible fool of herself. Then Xavier reached out and cupped her face in his large, calloused hand. "I care about you too," he said roughly. "So much it terrifies me. I came to these mountains to be alone, to escape the world and everything in it. But then you stumbled into my life being chased by a cougar, and suddenly alone does not feel peaceful anymore. It just feels empty." "Then do not be alone," Lily whispered, leaning into his touch. "Be with me." Xavier made a sound that was half laugh, half groan. "You do not understand what you are asking. I am not an easy man, Lily. I have seen and done things that have left marks on my soul. I do not know if I can give you the life you deserve." "I am not asking for easy," Lily said. "I am asking for real, for honest. I have spent 2 years just surviving, existing from one day to the next. You make me feel alive again. Is that not worth something?" "It is worth everything," Xavier said, and then he was kissing her. It was not a gentle kiss, not tentative or questioning. It was fierce and hungry, weeks of restrained longing finally unleashed. Lily kissed him back with equal intensity, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. He tasted like coffee and wild honey, and the warmth of his mouth on her sent heat flooding through her entire body. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Xavier rested his forehead against hers. "I should not want this," he murmured. "Should not want you. I have nothing to offer except a rough life in the wilderness." "You have yourself," Lily said. "That is all I want." "You deserve more," Xavier insisted. "A comfortable home, security, a man who can give you a proper life." "I deserve to choose my own path," Lily countered, "and I choose you if you will have me." Xavier pulled back to look at her, his storm cloud eyes intense. "Are you certain?" "Once we go down this road, there is no going back. I am not a man who does things halfway." "I am certain," Lily said without hesitation. "I have never been more certain of anything in my life." Xavier kissed her again, softer this time but no less passionate. When he pulled away, he was smiling, that rare, full smile that transformed his face. "Then I suppose we are doing this," he said. "I suppose we are," Lily agreed, happiness bubbling up inside her like champagne. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking about practicalities and possibilities. Xavier's camp was well established but isolated, a full day's journey into the mountains. He would need to make improvements before winter, weatherproof the shelter, stockpile more supplies. Lily would need to convince her mother that she was not making a terrible mistake, though she suspected Sarah would be more understanding than Xavier feared. As the sun began to set, they reluctantly headed back toward town. At the edge of the forest, Xavier pulled Lily close one more time. "I will come to speak with your mother properly," he said. "Ask for permission to court you the right way." "She already knows," Lily said with a laugh. "She has been watching us dance around each other for weeks, but I think she would appreciate the gesture." "Tomorrow, then," Xavier said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "And Lily, thank you." "For what?" "For seeing something in me worth caring about," Xavier said quietly. "I had forgotten what that felt like." Lily stood on her toes and kissed him gently. "Get used to it," she said. "Because I intend to remind you every single day for the rest of our lives." That night, Lily told her mother everything. Sarah listened without interrupting, her expression thoughtful. When Lily finished, slightly breathless and flushed with emotion, Sarah reached out and took her daughter's hand. "Do you love him?" she asked simply. "Yes," Lily said without hesitation. "I know it is fast, I know it is unconventional, but yes, I love him." "And does he love you?" "I think so," Lily said. "He has not said the words yet, but the way he looks at me, the way he talks about the future." "I believe he does." Sarah nodded slowly. "Your father and I knew each other for only 2 weeks before we married," she said. "Everyone told us we were rushing, that we would regret it. But we had 20 good years together, and I never regretted a single moment. When you know, you know." "So you are not angry?" Lily asked, relieved. "How could I be angry? You have been carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders for 2 years, caring for me, worrying about money, never thinking of yourself. If this man makes you happy, if he treats you well and loves you, then I am grateful for him." "He does make me happy," Lily said, smiling. "Happier than I thought possible." "Then that is all that matters," Sarah said firmly. "Though I expect to meet him properly before any decisions are made about the future." Xavier came the next day as promised, freshly shaven and wearing what Lily suspected were his best clothes. He sat down with Sarah and spoke to her with respect and honesty about his intentions. He did not sugarcoat his lifestyle or make promises he could not keep. He simply told her that he cared deeply for Lily and wanted to build a life with her, if she would have him, and if her mother would give her blessing. Sarah asked him hard questions about how he planned to provide for Lily, whether he expected her to give up her dreams and ambitions, what would happen if children came along. Xavier answered each one thoughtfully, making it clear that he saw Lily as a partner, not property, and that whatever future they built would be together. Finally, Sarah sat back and studied him for a long moment. "My daughter is the most precious thing in my life," she said. "If you hurt her, I will find a way to hurt you back, mountain man or not. Are we clear?" "Perfectly clear, madam," Xavier said, meeting her gaze steadily. "And for what it is worth, I would expect nothing less from a mother who loves her daughter." Sarah's stern expression cracked into a smile. "You will do," she said. "You will do just fine." With Sarah's blessing secured, Xavier and Lily began making concrete plans for their future. Xavier spent the next several weeks traveling back and forth between town and his mountain camp, improving the shelter and gathering supplies. Lily helped where she could, making preserves and salting meat, sewing warmer clothes for both of them. They decided to marry in late October, before the worst of the winter weather set in. It would be a small ceremony, just a few friends and Sarah in attendance, held in the small church on the edge of town. Lily made her own dress from fabric Xavier had purchased in town, a simple but elegant gown in deep green that complemented her coloring. The day of the wedding dawned cold and clear, frost glittering on every surface like scattered diamonds. Lily woke before sunrise, too excited and nervous to sleep. Sarah helped her dress and arranged her hair, pinning it up with careful precision and adding a few late-blooming wildflowers as decoration. "You look beautiful," Sarah said, tears glistening in her eyes. "Your father would have been so proud." "I wish he could be here," Lily said, her own eyes stinging. "He is here," Sarah said, touching a hand to her heart. "He is always here." The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. Xavier stood at the front of the church looking more nervous than Lily had ever seen him, his hair neatly tied back, his expression a mixture of joy and disbelief. When Lily walked down the short aisle toward him, his face transformed, softening with so much love that she felt tears spill over. They spoke their vows in steady voices, promising to love and honor each other through whatever challenges life might bring. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, and told Xavier he could kiss his bride, Xavier cupped Lily's face in his hands and kissed her with infinite tenderness, as if she were something infinitely precious and fragile. The small gathering cheered, and Lily laughed through her tears, happier than she ever remembered being. They held a simple celebration at the cabin afterward, with food and music provided by the few close friends Lily had made in town. Xavier was stiff and uncomfortable at first, unused to so many people and so much attention, but he gradually relaxed as the afternoon wore on, even managing to dance with Lily to a lively fiddle tune. As evening approached and the guests began to depart, Sarah pulled Lily aside for a private moment. "Are you certain about leaving tomorrow?" she asked. "You could stay in town for the winter, visit his camp when the weather improves." "I am certain, Mama," Lily said, squeezing her mother's hand. "My place is with my husband now, but I will visit as often as I can, and you know where we will be if you need me." "I know," Sarah said, though her voice was thick with emotion. "I just worry about you so far from everything." "I will be fine," Lily assured her. "Better than fine. I will be happy." That night, Lily and Xavier consummated their marriage in the small cabin, their joining tender and passionate and utterly right. Xavier was gentle with her, patient despite his own desire, making sure she experienced pleasure before seeking his own. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the narrow bed, talking in whispers until sleep finally claimed them both. They left at first light the following morning, Xavier carrying most of their supplies in a large pack on his back, Lily carrying a smaller bag of personal belongings. Sarah stood in the doorway of the cabin watching them go, and Lily turned back multiple times to wave until her mother was just a small figure in the distance. The journey to Xavier's camp took most of the day, following narrow trails that wound deep into the mountains. They stopped occasionally to rest and eat, but Xavier was clearly eager to reach their destination before dark, setting a steady pace that Lily matched without complaint. As they climbed higher, the landscape changed, becoming more rugged and wild. Massive pines towered overhead, their branches heavy with needles. Rocky cliffs rose on either side of the trail, and in the distance, Lily could see snow-capped peaks piercing the sky. It was beautiful in a harsh, unforgiving way, and she understood why Xavier loved it here. They reached the camp just as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Xavier's shelter was more substantial than Lily had expected. A well-built cabin nestled against a rocky outcropping that provided natural protection from wind and weather. Inside, it was a single large room with a stone fireplace, a sleeping platform built against one wall, and shelves for supplies and equipment. "It is not much," Xavier said, watching her nervously as she looked around. "But it is weatherproof and warm, and I can expand it come spring if you want more space." "It is perfect," Lily said honestly. "It already feels like home." Over the following days and weeks, they settled into a rhythm of domestic life. Xavier checked his trap lines while Lily organized their supplies and made the cabin more comfortable, adding curtains to the small window and braiding rugs for the floor. They cooked together, ate together, fell into bed together each night exhausted and happy. The first snow came in early November, a light dusting that turned the world white and clean. Xavier took Lily out into it, teaching her to read animal tracks and identify which trees could be tapped for sap. She proved to be a quick learner with good instincts, and he was impressed by her resilience and adaptability. As winter deepened and the snow piled higher, they spent more time inside the cabin, but Lily never felt trapped or restless. There was always something to do, whether it was tanning hides, repairing equipment, or simply sitting by the fire and talking. Xavier told her more about his past, gradually opening up about the horrors he had witnessed during the war, the friends he had lost, the reasons he had fled to the wilderness. Lily listened without judgment, offering comfort when he needed it and silence when that was what he preferred. In return, she shared her own fears and griefs, the weight of watching her father die slowly, the terror of nearly losing her mother too. They healed each other, two damaged souls finding peace in unexpected places. One evening in late December, as they sat wrapped in furs before the fire, Xavier took Lily's hand and pressed it to his chest. "I love you," he said, the words rough but sincere. "I do not think I have said it properly before, but I do. I love you more than I thought possible." "I know," Lily said, smiling. "I have known for a while, but it is nice to hear the words." "I am not good at words," Xavier admitted. "But I promise you this, Lily, I will spend every day of my life trying to make you happy, trying to be the man you deserve." "You already are," Lily said, pulling him down for a kiss. "You already are." They made love that night with particular intensity, the firelight painting their skin in gold and amber, their bodies moving together in perfect synchronization. Afterward, as Lily drifted toward sleep in Xavier's arms, she felt a profound sense of contentment. She had found exactly where she belonged. Winter passed slowly but not unpleasantly. They were snowed in for weeks at a time, but Xavier had prepared well, and they never lacked for food or warmth. Lily discovered that she loved the isolation, the way time seemed to move differently in the mountains, the utter silence of new fallen snow. In February, Lily realized she was pregnant. At first, she was not sure, but as the weeks passed and the signs became more obvious, there was no denying it. She was carrying Xavier's child, and the knowledge filled her with a complex mixture of joy and terror. She told him on a clear morning when they were checking the traps together. Xavier had just released a marten from one of the snares when Lily said, "I am with child. We are going to have a baby." Xavier went completely still, the dead animal forgotten in his hands. Then he turned to look at her, his expression stunned. "You are certain?" "As certain as I can be without seeing a doctor," Lily said. "All the signs are there." Xavier dropped the marten and crossed to her in 2 long strides, pulling her into a tight embrace. "A baby," he whispered against her hair. "We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Lily asked, suddenly nervous. They had never explicitly discussed children, had not planned for this to happen so soon. "Happy?" Xavier pulled back to look at her, and there were tears in his eyes. "Lily, I am terrified and thrilled and more happy than I have any right to be. A family. I never thought I would have a family." "Well, you are going to have one now," Lily said, laughing through her own tears. "In late summer, if I am calculating correctly." Xavier kissed her then, pouring all his love and wonder and fear into the gesture. When they finally broke apart, he rested a hand on her still flat stomach. "I will build us a bigger cabin," he said, "with a separate room for the baby, and we should talk about being closer to town, at least for a while. I do not want you giving birth out here with just me to help." "We have time to figure it all out," Lily said. "For now, let us just enjoy this." As spring arrived and the snow began to melt, Xavier made good on his promise, beginning work on an expansion to the cabin. He worked tirelessly, cutting and hauling timber, fitting logs together with the skill of long practice. Lily helped where she could, though Xavier insisted she not overexert herself given her condition. By early summer, the new cabin was complete, a solid structure with 2 rooms and a proper kitchen area. It was still simple and rustic, but it felt like a real home, a place where they could raise their child. In June, they made the journey back to Dodge City so Lily could see her mother and consult with the doctor. Sarah was overjoyed at the news of the coming grandchild and insisted that Lily stay in town for the birth. Xavier was reluctant to leave her, but Lily convinced him that she would be safer here with the doctor nearby and her mother to help. They found a compromise. Xavier would return to his trap lines for the summer, but would come back to town by late August and stay through the birth and beyond. It was not ideal, being separated, but it was only for a few months and both of them understood the practicality of it. The summer seemed to drag on forever. Lily stayed with her mother, growing larger and more uncomfortable as the baby developed. Sarah doted on her, making sure she ate well and rested often. The women of the town, who had initially been suspicious of Lily's choice to marry a mountain man, gradually warmed to her as they saw how devoted Xavier was during his weekly visits. Xavier would arrive every week like clockwork, bringing fresh meat and furs to trade, spending every possible moment with Lily before reluctantly returning to the mountains. He was fascinated by the changes in her body, the way the baby moved and kicked, and he would spend hours with his hand on her swollen belly, talking to their unborn child. In late August, true to his word, Xavier moved into town temporarily, renting a small room above the general store so he could be close to Lily. He found work doing odd jobs around town, repairing buildings and hauling heavy loads, anything to keep busy while they waited for the baby to arrive. Lily went into labor on a warm evening in early September, almost exactly a year after the night Xavier had saved her from the mountain lion. The contractions started as mild twinges, but quickly intensified into waves of pain that left her gasping. Sarah sent for the doctor and kept Xavier out of the room, much to his frustration. The labor lasted through the night and into the following morning, long hours of agony that tested Lily's strength to its limit. But finally, as the sun climbed high in the sky, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy with a surprisingly strong set of lungs and a thick shock of dark blonde hair. When the doctor finally allowed Xavier into the room, he found Lily exhausted but radiant, cradling their son against her chest. Xavier approached slowly, almost reverently, his eyes wide with wonder. "A son," he breathed, reaching out to touch one tiny fist. "We have a son." "We do," Lily said, smiling tiredly. "Would you like to hold him?" Xavier looked terrified at the prospect but nodded, carefully taking the small bundle into his arms. The baby was so tiny against his broad chest, so fragile and perfect. Xavier stared down at his son with an expression of pure awe, tears streaming unchecked down his face. "He is beautiful," Xavier whispered. "What should we call him?" They had discussed names throughout the summer but never quite settled on one. Now, looking at her husband holding their child with such tenderness, Lily knew exactly what his name should be. "Thomas," she said, "after my father." "Thomas Quinn." Xavier looked up, his eyes bright with emotion. "Thomas," he repeated. "That is perfect." They stayed in town through the fall, giving Lily time to recover and adjust to motherhood. Xavier proved to be a surprisingly natural father, patient with the baby's crying and attentive to his needs. He would walk Thomas around the small room for hours when the baby was fussy, singing old songs in his deep voice until the infant settled. As winter approached, they discussed their options. Returning to the mountain cabin would be difficult with a newborn, but staying in town permanently held no appeal for either of them. Finally, they decided on a compromise. They would stay in Dodge City through Thomas's first winter, then return to the mountains in the spring. Xavier would continue his trapping but would make more frequent trips to town for supplies and to maintain connections with civilization for their son's sake. It was not a perfect solution, but it worked for them. Over the following years, they developed a comfortable rhythm, spending summers and falls in the mountains and winters in town. Thomas grew into a healthy, energetic boy who loved the wilderness as much as his father did. When he was 3, Lily gave birth to a daughter they named Alina, and 2 years after that, another son arrived whom they called James. Xavier proved to be as devoted a father as he was a husband, teaching his children to hunt and trap, to respect the land and its creatures, to be strong and self-reliant. Lily continued her study of healing herbs, becoming known throughout the region as someone who could cure ailments the regular doctor could not touch. People would seek her out, traveling from distant settlements for her remedies. Sarah remained healthy and active well into her 60s, delighting in her grandchildren and taking pride in the life Lily had built. She passed away peacefully in her sleep one winter night, and though Lily grieved deeply, she took comfort in knowing her mother had lived to see her happy and settled. As the years passed, Xavier and Lily's love only deepened. They had their challenges, times when money was tight or illness struck, but they faced everything together as partners. Xavier never lost his preference for solitude, but he no longer needed it the way he once had. Lily and their children filled the empty spaces in his heart that he had thought would always remain hollow. On their 10th anniversary, they stood together on the ridge above their mountain cabin, watching the sun set over the peaks. Their children were inside with a neighbor who had agreed to watch them for the evening, giving Xavier and Lily a rare moment of privacy. "You ever regret it?" Xavier asked, his arm around Lily's waist. "Choosing this life instead of something easier?" Lily looked up at him, this man who had saved her life and given her a reason to live it fully. His hair was longer now, streaked with silver at the temples, and lines had appeared at the corners of his eyes. But he was still strong and capable, still the protective warrior who had charged a mountain lion to save a stranger. "Never," Lily said firmly. "Not for a single moment. You gave me everything I ever wanted, even things I did not know I needed. Adventure and purpose, and a love that makes every challenge worth facing." "I am the one who should be grateful," Xavier said, pulling her closer. "You took a broken man hiding in the mountains and made him whole again. You gave me a family, a reason to wake up each morning excited about what the day might bring. I love you more now than I did the day we married, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today." They kissed as the sun painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. Two souls who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from the ruins of their pasts. Lily thought back to that terrifying night in the forest, running for her life with a cougar at her heels. She thought about the moment Xavier had appeared, solid and certain and willing to risk everything for someone he did not know. That one act of courage had changed both their lives completely, setting them on a path neither could have imagined. Sometimes the greatest love stories began with the smallest moments. A woman lost in the darkening woods, a mountain man who chose to help instead of turning away, a connection forged in danger and fear that transformed into something profound and lasting. As they walked back to the cabin hand in hand, Lily felt overwhelmingly grateful for that long-ago September evening, for the cougar that had stalked her through the shadows, for the mountain man who had walked her safely home and then stayed to build a life beside her. Their story had started with survival, but had become about so much more. It had become about choosing each other every single day, about building a family and a home in the wilderness, about finding peace and purpose in unexpected places. Inside the cabin, their children's laughter rang out, and Xavier smiled, that full, genuine smile that Lily had learned meant he was completely happy. They had everything they needed right here, in this simple cabin on a mountainside far from civilization. They had love and family and a future full of promise. Lily squeezed Xavier's hand, and he squeezed back, a wordless communication that spoke volumes. They had walked through the shadows together and emerged into the light, stronger for the journey. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky above the mountains, Lily knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be, with exactly the person she was meant to be with. Their love story, which had begun with danger and rescue, would continue for the rest of their lives, growing deeper and richer with each passing year. The mountain man and the woman he had saved had become husband and wife, partners and lovers, parents and best friends. They had built a life together that honored both their needs, both their dreams. And though challenges would surely come in the years ahead, they would face them as they always had, side by side, united by a love that had proven stronger than fear, stronger than hardship, stronger than anything the world could throw at them. In the end, that was all that mattered. Not where they lived or how much they had, but that they had each other and the family they had created together. Xavier had walked Lily safely home through the shadows that first night, and every day since, they had continued walking together toward whatever the future held, confident that as long as they had each other, they could handle anything. Their love story was not the easiest or the most conventional, but it was theirs, forged in the wilderness and tested by time, and it would endure for all their days. The cougar that had stalked Lily through the darkening woods had inadvertently brought them together, and for that, neither of them would ever be anything but grateful. As Xavier pulled Lily close in the doorway of their home, their children rushing to greet them, he whispered in her ear the words he said every night. "I love you, Lily Quinn, today, tomorrow, and always." "And I love you," Lily whispered back, her heart full to bursting. "Forever." It was a promise they would keep for the rest of their lives. A vow spoken not just with words but with every action, every choice, every moment they spent together. The mountain man and his beloved, bound together by fate and courage, and a love that would never fade, no matter how many years passed or how many challenges they faced. Their story, which had begun in fear and danger, had transformed into something beautiful and enduring, a testament to the power of love to heal old wounds and create new beginnings. And as they stood together in the doorway of their mountain home, surrounded by the family they had built and the life they had chosen, they knew that every step of the journey had been worth it. Every moment of uncertainty had led them exactly where they needed to be. Together, always together, they would face whatever came next, walking through shadows and light alike, their hands clasped tight and their hearts beating as one.